live series, Ask the Vision Loss Experts, Coping with COVID-19. My name is Dr. Tricia Grant, and I'm the Senior Director of Low Vision Research at the Chicago Lighthouse.
And I'm Dr. Brian Walensky. I'm a low vision optometrist in New York City and work with Orcam Technologies. Our intent for this series is to discuss topics, engage people, share information as pertains to vision loss during this time of social isolation, COVID-19 pandemic. And in these episodes, we want to bring in guests, bring up topics that concern the community during this time.
And we welcome everyone to join, whether you or a loved one are visually impaired or blind, or you just want to learn more about the experiences of people who have vision loss, especially during this time of social distancing.
So we really want to thank everyone for joining us each week. If you know someone who may think that might benefit from our discussions, or you just want to share our information, please do so. Take a moment to hit the share button on this post.
And today we have a wonderful guest joining us from his home, Dr. Michael Smith. And I just want to tell everyone a bit about Dr. Smith. He obtained his PhD in clinical psychology from the Illinois Institute of Technology in 1992 and is a licensed clinical psychologist. Since receiving his doctorate, he has been in private practice and has been a faculty member teaching in undergraduate, graduate, and doctoral programs. For the last 4 years, he has been a psychologist at the Chicago Lighthouse, where he conducts individual, couples, family, and group therapy with children, adults, seniors who are blind and visually impaired. Dr. Smith has offered both community and professional convention presentations dealing with visual impairment, chronic medical problems, and resilience.
Welcome, Dr. Smith. Before we start, I really wanted to mention to the audience how significant your work is at the Chicago Lighthouse. Just so everyone knows, here in the US, less than 25% of vision rehabilitation services offer psychological services, and even less than 5% even have a clinical psychologist on staff. So I really appreciate what you do. In my years of low vision practice, it's great to see, and I always recommend psychological care. So thank you, Dr. Smith. To start, can you tell us a little bit about the need for mental health within the model of low vision rehabilitation?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone is staying healthy today. Before we get started, I actually have seen lots of people on these Zoom things, right? And I should have a better background. I actually own books. So just for the record, I know Dr. Smolinski had lots of books behind him. The concept of kind of the importance of treating the whole person is kind of prevalent throughout, not just with low vision people or individuals with low vision problems, but with really kind of any kind of chronic illness. Obviously, chronic illness or illness of any kind impacts not only your physical functioning, but part of it, and we know more and more about this, kind of your mental health and how you think about it and your feelings with it help in the healing process. So that's why the Chicago Lighthouse, I think, has kind of wisely decided to make this holistic approach much more a focus of the low vision clinic.
And thank you. And it is well documented that anxiety and depression are common health problems for people who have vision loss. So prior to the start of the pandemic, what are some of the common themes that you heard from your patients?
Yeah, certainly that sense of loss is a key component to any kind of adjustment. Loss, if you think about it, we have models for healthy grieving and mourning that deal with loss, but even the loss of vision or the loss of your independence, those kinds of losses are almost like a death, right? So if we think about what's healthy when you grieve somebody who's died, it's those same kind of two healthy components that go into the loss of vision or the loss of independence that go along with that. So the two important pieces are, the first one is that you have to kind of acknowledge and find healthy ways to express all the feelings associated with the loss. And then somehow you have to kind of build a kind of a healthy, engaged, meaningful life after that, right? So it's that two important components to deal with loss.
Dr. Smith, have you been providing telehealth services? And if so, how have patients been with that? Have they received it well?
Well, most of the people that I see are probably better at the technology than I am. So I had to ramp up and learn how to do a lot of this. But certainly telehealth is being really quite well received since we've all had the stay-at-home order. And I have the ability, or what seems to work for people with visual impairments is some of them, a percentage, can actually set up video conferencing so that I'm able to do that. Most of it is just having a phone, right? So we conduct phone sessions that seem to be helpful and seem to go quite well. So both of those avenues are available and seem to be working.
Great. So someone doesn't need to necessarily have a computer to set things up. They can just kind of call on the phone. They don't need to be technologically savvy. That's great.
Absolutely. We can just do it on the phone.
That's great.
So in the past couple of weeks, Dr. Walensky and I have been touching on the implications of social isolation and distancing. And we've been talking to patients and clients. And last week, you may have heard, we even spoke to 2 individuals who have been really helpful in helping us to identify some of these issues. Can you talk to us about some of the issues that you've been hearing from your clients during your teletherapy sessions? And how is it a little bit different from what you heard prior to the pandemic?
Well, I guess there's a couple of components. One of them obviously is the isolation, right? So certainly that sense of isolation and loneliness kind of is prevalent across, and it's heightened for people with visual impairments, right? Because even before, there was a certain sense at times of feeling isolated or lonely, right? Just because of the visual impairment itself. It's even more heightened now. But that sense of isolation and loneliness is really present for all of us who are doing the stay at home, particularly for those individuals who are living alone. The other kind of, some of the other components of that is kind of, if you think about it, is the uncertainty that we're all living under, right? It's really, it heightens that sense of isolation because we don't know when things will be different. So that sense of uncertainty certainly heightens that.
You mentioned people living alone. So that brings up, people together with families. So, the thing when all this started, everyone talked about how we're going to have this baby boom in 9 months. Now people are talking about, okay, we're going to need more divorce. So, what would you say to people who are, let's say, with families, they're coexisting together, working close by to each other, or maybe they're just in a relationship and trying to figure that out, or figuring out childcare and homeschooling, all these stressful things, financial situations, just regular family stuff, but now being kind of close quartered all the time.
Yeah, and certainly makes it more complicated for sure. One of the things in general, and this is kind of a theme across all of what we're talking about today, is that I think it's important to kind of be kind, right? So it's not only to be kind to each other, which is kind of really important because we're all under this kind of huge amount of stress living in these stay-at-home orders and having these compressed quarters that you've talked about, right? So we need to be kind to each other, which means sometimes we probably could just cut the other person some slack, go away for a few minutes and kind of let this kind of smooth down, right? We also need to be kind to ourselves, right? Because again, there is no perfect way to go through this, right? We are all attempting, hopefully, to do the best we can. So that kindness piece is really important. There's some really kind of practical stuff, particularly for families and also for individuals at the stay-at-home kind of order. One of them is, it is important to kind of still try to have a routine, right? So kind of to schedule out your day is still important. The routine of when you kind of get up, when you eat, when you do work, if you're working at home, when you do your homeschooling, if it's children at home, when you have time to play, when you have time to take a nap, when you have time to watch TV. All of that is important to, I think, have a try to schedule that up pretty much to have a routine kind of on a daily basis. That also helps within that routine, particularly in families. You can certainly schedule time to be alone, right? Let's agree on this 30 minutes, we're not going to interact with each other. which is really okay, particularly if you do it ahead of time, right? We're going to schedule out kind of the day. So that routine is so important, because to go back to, in some ways, routine is a small thing that we can do to begin to handle the uncertainty, right? So I don't know what's going to happen a week from now, but I do know what I could do today.
Yeah.
So I do have that routine today.
Yeah, that's great advice. And can you give an example? So if you're at home and your family members are just, really maybe pressuring you for help with this, or, cook dinner, asking for a friend, right? What is a kind way that you can, just take a time out, as an adult? So you have children who are, putting demands on you. How can you take a good time out?
Trickier, right? Obviously, right? But it certainly doesn't help to have them kind of, and this is true whether we're at stay at home or just in life, right? Even particularly for kids, that kind of set of routine is really important, right? So it's very appropriate to say, oh, remember, and for littler kids, for instance, you can even begin to develop they can be part of what's our schedule for tomorrow, right? Okay. And they can be part of making that schedule. It's always good to kind of write it down or post it someplace, right? Because then if they're kind of at you at that moment in the immediate demand, you can say, oh, wait, remember, we're going to do this like over here in 10 minutes, or we're going to do this thing, then we do this thing, right? To help them begin to kind of schedule up their lives too.
That's great advice. I like that.
And then after the, weeping and gnashing of teeth where they're wailing on the floor, then you hopefully get back to it too, right? Yeah. It doesn't always work the first time is what I'm saying.
Right. If everyone's just joining us, I just wanted to let you know this is Ask the Vision Loss Experts, Coping with COVID-19. I'm Dr. Brian Walensky, low vision optometrist, and we're here with my co-host, Dr. Patricia Grant, Director of Research at the Chicago Lighthouse. We're now speaking with Dr. Smith, clinical psychologist, and how people with vision loss are coping during this time of social isolation, which is, I guess, now our new normal. Dr. Grant, I know we had some questions that you had from the audience.
Yeah, so Dr. Smith, earlier this week, we announced that you would be joining us, and we asked that the audience members send us their questions ahead of time so that we can share them with you today. So this first one comes from Dale Hall in Chandler, Arizona, and he says, we are constantly told to stay at home, but part of the problem is that I don't know what to do while at home. I often find myself bored and feeling down. What are some activities I can do to improve my mood?
Yeah, excellent question. One of the things to think about is even before, if I can backtrack just a little bit, right?
Sure.
So one of the things when you're feeling bored is that you actually have to, and this is true across, because there's lots of feelings that come up, right? So not only is it a kind of a bored feeling, but we also are all kind of sad sometimes, or we get nervous, or all those kinds of things, is that you have to kind of acknowledge that feeling, right? Take a deep breath. And then you tap into, it's important to tap into kind of your creative piece, right? This is true for everyone. We all have the courage to be creative, right? It's a particular demand at this time to be really courageous, right? Because we're going to be asked to do new things. And part of that new things is we can be creative. So for instance, I've had a number of clients start doing some kind of art, right? Now this is for both blind and visually impaired. I have a blind client a client with who's totally blind, he's producing great stuff. And part of what he does is, and this is helpful for him, he does like sculpture stuff, right? So even though he was going off to a class and learning how to do that, right now he bought some Play-Doh and he's sculpting Play-Doh sculpture, right? Which are pretty cool, right?
That's very cool.
A lot of my clients are interested in, and I think this is a really good use of the time, whether you have visual impairment or not, but they're kind of doing almost like memoirs, right? So they're like either dictating or they're writing down kind of their life stories, etc. And we all have these wonderful life stories that are important to share, even then generationally, right? So they're beginning to do those kinds of things. I have one client who's learning the ukulele. So certainly there's a number of things that you can engage in. One of one of the activities that you engage in when you're bored, and it helps kind of just how you handle this in general, is that there is an important component and value to kind of helping others also. So I've had a number of clients kind of reach out on the phone to people they haven't had contact with for a while, for instance. They're intentional about calling somebody they hadn't called for a while, just to check in, see how things are going, to share their experience. It doesn't have to be somebody you haven't seen. It could be somebody you see all the time, but that kind of helping others is an important component. I have another client who likes to plant. So we're, at least in the Midwest here, we're getting to the planting season.
Yeah.
So she's working on her plants, right? So those are some of the activities, but the biggest key here is be creative and be open to trying new things.
I like that. I really appreciate the courageous piece of that.
And speaking of new things, I mean, there are going to be a lot of new things, like I mentioned, the new normal. So Robin Wallen, who's listening right now, and also we spoke with last week about transportation, brings up a lot of great issues. And she's bringing up also about the new normal, worries about, okay, after this is over, are we, you know, I still have to maintain 6 feet from someone. Am I going to see, being visually impaired, is someone going to see the line spacing in the stores from someone else? All these new challenges that are going to be brought up. So the anxiety just over that, I guess, to deal with the new. So
sure. And I don't have great specific answers, because again, that's the uncertainty of this. I don't know what this is all going to look like in the next few months, right? But certainly, again, to get back to the kind of the healthy way to handle feelings is that the anxiety about how will I get around, what will happen, et cetera, is to make sure that the first step is you always have to kind of identify and label the feeling appropriately. So it's very appropriate to feel nervous about what's coming up, very appropriate. Then you have to find a healthy way to express it. And sometimes it's as simple as just sharing it out loud, right? So I'm feeling nervous is a very healthy way. Some people, when they're feeling mad, for instance, they'll kind of scribble mad pictures and throw them away. The next thing then is to kind of get rid of that unhelpful thought, right? Oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's happened. You almost have to visualize getting rid of it, right? So some people visualize themselves, you know, crumpling up those words up in their head and throwing it in a wastebasket or out the window. You know, some people visualize putting in a bubble and let it fly away into the air, disappear, right? And then the next thing is, then you think the helpful, real thought, right? The helpful thought, which is, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know I have the ability to handle whatever happens, right? So it's kind of that, almost that step-by-step process when you're feeling particularly nervous or particularly sad, that it's important to engage in that process. And then you need to do something to feel slightly better.
So I like that. So a 3-step process. So you want to name your feeling, and then I'm taking notes here, and then you want to visualize getting rid of it. And then you want to
express in a healthy way, right?
Okay, express in a healthy
visualize,
way.
Get rid of the unhelpful thoughts and think of the helpful thoughts. Yeah,
okay,
it's a really
I like
steps.
that.
Yeah,
okay.
Well, the 5th step is, if it's unpleasant, if it's an unpleasant feeling, go and do something to feel a bit better. This is important to do even with pleasant feelings. Right? You got to stick with the pleasant feeling and then keep on doing more whatever you're doing.
That is great advice. So we have another question here, and this one comes from an audience member in Chicago. And he says, or maybe she, many people talk about breathing techniques for relaxing their nerves and even to improve sleep patterns. Are you a fan of these techniques, Dr. Smith, and do you recommend them to your clients?
Yes. So it really is important, and they're called abdominal breathing. You have to do deep abdominal breaths. And along with that, you do something called progressive muscle relaxation. There's actually lots of these on like YouTube, if you have access to the internet. They're 10 to 15 minutes, and they teach you how to do this. It's an important first step pretty much to really almost everything. Because if you think about it, if you take some nice, slow, deep abdominal breaths, It actually activates the calming nervous system in your body, because there's that big nerve that goes down your chest and into your belly. So when you take those nice, slow, deep breaths, it activates that nerve, which helps you feel physically calmer, which then helps you be able to, and here's the key, the whole key is it helps you pause. We want you to pause in order to then think about what healthy things can I do now, right? So it really is the pause to let you like get rid of the unhelpful thoughts. It's the pause to say, I can go do this. It's the pause to say, well, here's a healthy way to express how I'm feeling. It's the pause to say, I don't have to scream at my spouse. Maybe I could talk differently.
Okay. And you mentioned that there are YouTube videos that kind of help you follow along. What would you type in the search menu if you were on YouTube? What would you look for?
Probably progressive muscle relaxation.
Okay.
Or abdominal breathing.
Great.
So definitely these are a lot of positives. Are there any, with all the negativity going on, there are these positives. So that's great to hear.
Yeah, definitely.
Are there any, positive things that you can tell people who maybe are living alone versus living with families that maybe you could share positive things?
Yeah, I think this is really for both people alone and with families, right? Because ultimately, I know this sounds a little weird at the moment, but hopefully out of even these kind of really tough experiences that we're all having, that you can have some growth, right? There's an opportunity always to be resilient, to be courageous. And part of how you do that is it's kind of, if you think about focusing on what has value to you, kind of you have time now to think about what your values are, what has meaning to you, what's important, right? Then you can begin to act consistently with that. So even today, but particularly after this is all over, there's things that you can choose to do consistent with living this meaningful life that you want to live. And that's regardless of kind of visual impairment or not, that's regardless of what your status is or not. You always have that opportunity because those kinds of things are under your control. The virus is not, staying at home orders are not, but how you choose to live consistent with your values are. You can live this life in a meaningful way.
I like that. I really appreciate that.
I've been giving things definitely a lot of thought lately.
Yeah.
Then the reality, and that's kind of the opportunity we have, forced time to do that.
Yeah. I really like being forced to slow down. I mean, I was definitely someone running, I had my son in so many activities that now I'm like, what was I thinking? That was just too much. It's nice to be able to stay a little bit grounded and to just be comfortable at home. So that's really what we've been focusing on a lot. This question comes from Susan Lieberman, and thank you everyone who's sending in your questions. We are receiving them in real time, so please continue to send them. Susan Lieberman asks, how can we learn to cope with the uncertainty during this pandemic? And I think you touched a lot on that's something that you're often hearing, but what are some of the things that people can actually do to kind of get rid of those negative thoughts?
One of them is that, and this is more kind of, I want you to think about this, right? Is that part of what people do is they get caught up in that worry, right? Yeah. And worry about what's going to happen a week from now or 2 weeks from now, or what happens if this happens, I have to worry about that. That's another place where you can kind of take a few deep breaths, right? Kind of amp down a little bit, get rid of that worry thought, because the reality is worry is not helpful. This is not news to anyone, right? But it doesn't help now, right? Because you're just all wrapped up in that feeling of worry and that, which is pretty horrible. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't help what's going to happen. It has zero impact on what's going to happen in the future. So I can sit and worry about something all I want, right? It doesn't impact the reality when it happens. So that one of the things is to kind of practice kind of not get worrying that much. And one of the concepts that you hear a lot about is that it's important to stay in the moment. Mm-hmm. So if you stay in the moment now, and there's some kind of strategies for that, right? If you find yourself worrying a whole lot, right, take a few deep breaths. And one of the things is to see if you can focus on some other sense modality, right? See if you can see something different in the room that you focus on. See if you can, I don't know, I'm always a little hesitant about this, but see if there's a different smell in your room or in your house or apartment, right? Hopefully a pleasant one, but you know, you're going to focus on that. Or particularly listen. Sound's a nice one, right? So sometimes that's why sometimes music helps, right? Because then you're attending to something, a different modality, right? So you listen to something.
Yeah.
You listen for a different sound, or, you know, in spring here outside my office, there's, you know, a few birds at times, right? So you listen for that sound. That's another way to kind of interrupt that worry kind of stuckness.
Like that.
I've been playing a lot of music during downtime, and it has been helpful. And a
Yeah.
lot of music that makes me feel good. So that's
absolutely. Yeah. So I know that there's lots of discussion about what to watch on Netflix, but for me, it's always important to watch stuff that I'm a big fan of, movies that have happy Hollywood endings, or, you know, with my granddaughter, I'm a big fan of the Trolls, etc. So you gotta watch. To me, you gotta watch stuff that's pretty fun. Versus some of the stuff, you gotta be careful getting too trapped in some of
the happily ever after movies.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Speaking of watching and listening, what do you say about the news? I mean, we're getting updates every day, you know, about what's going on with COVID-19, and you want to stay informed, but at the same time, news can make you feel nervous about the future.
I know even personally for me, I've started, you got to, and that's the routine or schedule in your life. I tend to catch up in the morning for a little bit, maybe in the evening for a little bit, but I attempt not to watch it at other times because it is really overwhelming.
Yes.
So yeah, I would be intentional about not watching or going on your phone as much to find the information.
Well, Dr. Smith, thank you so much for being here and discussing all this with us. This has been wonderful. We're learning something, and I'm sure everybody else is.
Good. And I guess certainly, and maybe Trisha's going to talk about this, certainly for people like through the Lighthouse or whatever, I'm certainly available if somebody wants to talk on the phone or video conference. Yeah.
Yes, we will talk about how to contact you. We'll be sure that people are able to after this live. Thank you.
Very good. Stay well, stay healthy, huh?
Thank you. You too. And thank you again.
Yep. Bye now.
So as we were just speaking about, if you are interested in contacting Dr. Smith, his information can be found on the Chicago Lighthouse website. Please visit www.chicagolighthouse.org and type in Ask the Experts in the search menu. And there it'll bring you to our webpage, where in addition to Dr. Smith's information, you can also replay all of our episodes, and you can link to the resources that we've mentioned during our conversations. And the direct link to the website will also be posted in the comment section below.
Great. No, that was great having Dr. Smith here. Hopefully we will bring in more guests for the future on different topics, and that's what we're hoping to do. But really, it's all about you out there. Let us know your questions. Let us know what topics and questions are important to you. One thing I like that Dr. Smith brought up is, you know, I'm a fan of assistive technology and technology, but you don't need to be tech savvy in order to do telehealth. I think that's so important to know. You just have to pick up the phone. Really, that's old school and what it's about.
No, I
did
agree.
a phone call with my doctor last week, and it was helpful.
Good. No, I totally agree with you. And I think that not too long ago, we kept saying telehealth was going to be the wave of the future. And now it's like we've been forced into the future. And I think that we're going to see, you know, expansion of telehealth services and virtual visits now and even after the pandemic. Telehealth is just a great way to navigate around some of those barriers, you know, with access and not having providers, you know, within your neighborhood or even reachable. So telehealth is really important. And again, I think we're going to continue to see more of it.
And I like how he brings up doing positive things, listening to music, reading a book, or you can listen to audiobooks, or however, you know, what it is, or start doing something you always wanted to do. I know someone who now wants to try to learn a language. So there's
Yeah.
those things and slow down, as Dr. Smith says. I mean, that's great advice. But also I like what he says about having a routine, getting up at the same time, eating at the same time, and maybe scheduling time apart. You know, that's true for a lot of people. You know, half the time these days, I can't remember even what day it is. So what about you, Dr. Grant? Do you have that same issue?
Yes, I'm always asking what day it is. The one day that I know is Thursdays, and that's because we're here with you, the audience. So that's a good routine for me, is preparing for today. And I hope that everyone puts this into the routine and continues to come back on Thursdays. That's one day you can't forget.
Well, one routine we're all doing is washing our hands all the time. So actually, one last question comes from Ellsworth Grant and asks, why is washing hands with soap and water more effective than using the hand sanitizer or alcohol-based hand sanitizer?
Yeah, I think this is a really great question. So both hand sanitizer and hand washing with soap and water are both effective for killing the virus based on the information that we know. But with hand washing, you not only kill the virus, but you're also washing it off of your hands, and you're washing any additional dirt and things like that. With hand sanitizer and alcohol-based hand sanitizer, you are putting it on your hands and you're killing the virus, but you're not necessarily washing it away. So it's best if you have soap and water available easily to just go and wash your hands properly. I always sing happy birthday twice to make sure I'm washing my hands and, under my fingernails and all that. So you have to wash your hands properly for it to be effective. If you don't have soap and water, easily nearby, then use hand sanitizer, but be sure to put it on the back of your hands too. And you want to wipe your hands off with a paper towel when you're done. I think a lot of people forget to do that. They just put hand sanitizer and they're done, but wipe that all off, because then you're wiping everything away. So hand washing first, hand sanitizer second, if not, but make sure you're cleaning your hands no matter what.
So I did see actually two OrCam questions, and I just wanted to say out there what I'll do, because we're at the end. I'll get on Facebook and answer those personally. So that way we can wrap up here, because I think this is one of our longest ones we've done.
It is, but it was great. It was very informative.
Exactly.
So thank you again to everyone who tuned in today. Please come back next week, and don't forget to send your questions ahead of time. And also, if you want to see particular guests or you want to hear from other people, just let us know. We really want your feedback, so we're bringing you what you want.
Definitely. And everyone, please stay well, stay safe, stay healthy. Remember to keep washing those hands and don't touch your face. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.